Welcome back to Breaking the Chains, Healing from Physical and Emotional Abuse. I am your host, Kelly. This is Season 9, Episode 4, which is the last episode of Season 9. Again, this is Season 9, Episode 4. So I want to welcome you all back to Breaking the Chains, Healing from Physical and Emotional Abuse. Donations help my podcast to grow and generate more fluently. Also, I want to announce we will be closing our merchandise store in a few more weeks. For we are not selling many items to keep the merchandise store open. Please feel free to buy an item or items from our merchandise store before it closes. I am so grateful for each listener and each supporter of my podcast. Again, I am your host, Kelly. So I'm going to start off this episode again with a question. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast. Feel free to comment. Again, I want this to be a community of victims and survivors of domestic violence as we share our stories and we are going through the healing process together. Does your abuser or ex-abuser play the victim consistently? So the title of this episode is called, Why Do Abusers Constantly Play the Victim? So, abusers of domestic violence constantly play the victim by fabricating the truth about his or her abusive actions towards their victim or survivor. The abuser wants to gain sympathy is another reason why he or she plays the victim. Abusers constantly play the victim to avoid accountability of their abusive actions. The abuser plays the victim for he or she has the need to be in control over the victim or survivor's emotions. Abusers of DV play the victim because it is a manipulation tactic, which also involves an abuser using guilt and pity. Abusers present himself or herself as the victim, for they are using the manipulation tactic to control their victim or survivor's emotions, as I stated previously. Also, an abuser plays the victim to avoid taking responsibility of their abusive actions. The main reason an abuser plays the victim is because he or she is a master manipulator. So, I am going to state the definition of manipulation. A major tactic utilized by abusers to control their victim or survivor's perception. And the definition of a master manipulator: abusers are exceptionally skilled at controlling his or her victim or survivor for their personal gain through deceptive tactics. Also, Darvo manipulation is another technique abusers utilizes when playing the victim. I discussed Darvo manipulation in previous episodes of this podcast, so my explanation will be very short. please feel free to go back to the previous episodes and listen more about the Darvo manipulation tactic. So Darvo, D stands for deny the abuse. This is all what the abuser is doing. A, attack the victim's character. R, for reverse, the abuser claims to be the victim. V, the victim, the abuser blames the abuse on his or her victim. O, offender, an abuser takes no responsibility for their abusive behaviors. Abusers play the victim so the actual victim or survivor looks like the offender. Abusers portray themselves as a victim because they are very self-centered, meaning abusers are narcissistic. The manipulation tactic is the major tactic used by abusers to play the victim. An abuser wants people to believe he or she is the victim, for they fabricate each horrendous act of domestic violence. Abusers lack empathy. It means he or she does not care who they hurt. An abuser's reality is extremely distorted. Abusers will not state to people about the physical or emotional abuse he or she caused. So the abusers deny the physical or emotional abuse they cause to their victims or survivors. Abusers are the people causing major damage to his or her victims or survivors. Abusers never understand their abusive behaviors caused to their victims or let me restate that. Abusers never understand their abusive behaviors caused to their victims or survivors, and why their victim or survivors act in a negative way. It is exactly why an abuser wants to refrain from looking like the toxic person in the relationship. Abusers are the toxic person in the relationship, causing extreme damage on a daily basis to his or her victims or survivors. Abusers do not understand the cause and effect of their abusive actions, for he or she is unwilling to take accountability for their abusive behaviors. Abusers play the victim through defense coping mechanisms such as denial and projection. The abuser will use emotional or physical abuse to their victim or survivor, and the abuser will receive a negative reaction. Negative reaction means the victim or survivor could begin weeping, speaking about how the abuse is damaging him or her. An abuser only wants to see the negative reaction and not realize the physical or emotional abuse he or she caused to their victim or survivor. It is like the abusers are trying to pretend the mental or physical abuse they caused to you did not happen. In reality, the mental or physical abuse consistently occurred during the toxic relationship. So, as I stated earlier about projection, that's why abusers use projection also. So, the definition of projection is when abusers project his or her abusive behaviors onto their victims or survivors. Excuse me, I need to get a drink. So, you wonder, how should you react to a abuser who is consistently playing the victim? So here are 3 ways to respond to an abuser of DV that always plays the victim. Number 1, don't defend yourself, define. Here's an example. When your abuser, ex-abuser, responds with, "You are not getting it," it's best not to respond, or you can state to your abuser or ex-abuser, "I am only going to discuss with you about our child or teenager's schedule or after-school activities." Especially when your abuser or ex-abuser is degrading your character. The only person he or she deserves is discussing about you all's children or teenagers. If you all do not have children or teenagers together, you can respond to your abuser or ex-abuser, "I have healed, or I am healing from all the abusive actions that you caused me, and I am moving forward with my life." Clarity wins over emotions. You're not defending yourself, you're just defining what's truly happening. Number 2, stop the guilt loop. Abusers love using the guilt trip tactic with his or her victim or survivor. Here's an example of the guilt trip tactic from the abuser. "I guess I can't speak to anyone then." Your response should be calm and with clarity. You can state to your abuser or ex-abuser, "It is for the best that I not discuss anything with you, since you consistently use the blame shift and guilt trip tactic with me during every conversation." You could also respond, "Since I am in the healing process, or I have healed from all the physical or emotional abuse that you caused me, it is best for my peace of mind not to engage in this conversation." Number 3 is another way to respond to your abuser when he or she is placed the victim. Exit with boundaries, not frustration. Your abuser or ex-abuser will consistently use the blame shifting tactic. Let me rephrase. Your abuser or ex-abuser will consistently use the blame shifting tactic during every conversation, so the best response is, "I truly do not believe the same conversation is helping us resolve any issues. I have to protect my peace of mind during my healing process." You are sticking to your boundaries with your abuser or ex-abuser without showing him or her any frustration. Also, you are protecting your energy, for you have healed from the emotional or physical abuse you are walking through the healing process. In conclusion, abusers of domestic violence play the victim, for it is a manipulation tactic, which involves him or her using guilt and pity. The abuser plays the victim by fabricating the truth about their abusive behaviors. An abuser of DV wants to gain sympathy from others. That is another reason why he or she plays the victim. The abuser plays the victim for he or she wants to be in control over their victim or survivor's emotions. Lastly, the abuser will consistently play the victim to avoid accountability of his or her abusive behaviors. Abusers will always play the victim. He or she is never the victim. No abuser plays the victim better than the one who caused the most damage by emotionally or physically abusing his or her victim or survivor. Therefore, abusers will play the victim for a long or short period of time before other individuals become aware of the truth by witnessing the physical or emotional abuse he or she does consistently to their victim or survivor. Forgiveness and keeping boundaries is the two major ways. Forgiveness and keeping boundaries are the two major ways to protect your family when your abuser or ex-abuser continues to play the victim. Forgiveness and keeping boundaries with your abuser or ex-abuser combine very well, especially when your abuser or ex-abuser consistently plays the victim. Forgiveness and keeping boundaries helps the victim or survivor to maintain peace of mind, for your abuser or ex-abuser is still not taking accountability for his or her abusive actions. Again, as I stated at the beginning of this episode, we will be closing our merchandise store in a few weeks, for we are not selling many items to keep the merchandise store open. Please feel free to buy any items from our merchandise store before it closes. And thank you so much for your continued support. Also, to each listener and each supporter of my podcast, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.